Hi, everybody. I'm I'm reading an article in the Wall Street Journal. It's an essay on the opinion. Actually, it's in the life and art section, and it's titled "Marijuana is More Dangerous Than You Think." And one of the things that I do when I read an article in the Wall Street Journal is the first thing I do is I look at the author's name. This is an author whose name is Alex Berenson. And then before I read the article, I always scroll down to read the credentials of the person writing the article. Now remember, the title of the article is, let me scroll back. The title of the article is, "Marijuana is More Dangerous Than You Think." As legalization spreads, more Americans are becoming heavy users of cannabis despite its links to violence and mental illness. So who is Alex Berenson? Well, let's scroll down and let's find out. Mr. Berenson is a former New York Times reporter and the author of 12 novels. He's an author. He's a former New York Times reporter. This essay, the Wall Street Journal says, is adapted from his new book, quote, "Tell Your Children the Truth About Marijuana, Mental Illness, and Violence," which will be published by Simon & Schuster on January 8, sometime next week. Something that caught my eye, and I want to make clear, I don't consume marijuana. I voted for Amendment 64, which is our proposition in Colorado several years ago to legalize both recreational and medicinal marijuana. I voted for it. I've always believed that marijuana should be legalized. It's no different, in my opinion, than alcohol or prescription drugs or anything else that people want to use. I think people ought to have the choice to do it. But listen to this paragraph. None of these studies, he's citing studies from Finland and Denmark, none of these studies prove that rising cannabis use has caused population-wide increases in psychosis or other mental illness, although they do offer suggestive evidence of a link. What the hell is a suggestive evidence? If it's not correlation, if it's not causation, then I guess we have a new category, and that is a suggestive link. He goes on to say this. What is clear is that in individual cases, marijuana can cause psychosis, and psychosis is a high-risk factor for violence. Okay, let me restate that. What is clear is that in individual cases, alcohol, opioids, other prescription drugs, watching too much television, spending too much time on YouTube, listening to too much talk radio, any number of things on an individual basis can cause psychosis, and psychosis is a high risk factor for violence. I guess that means that anything that can cause psychosis, therefore, must be banned, which is what he proposes. He is obviously opposed to marijuana. So I haven't talked about this on air, but the Department of Public Safety, the Colorado Department of Public Safety, did a study. They decided, well, they didn't decide, they were required to do this based on Colorado law. They had to study to look at what the effects of the legalization of marijuana have been in Colorado. Listen to this. In 2016, the most recent data available, 27,244 cases were filed in court that included a charge of driving under the influence. 27,000 cases. 17,000 of those cases were matched with either a breath or blood test. Of those, 3,946 had blood samples screened for the presence of marijuana. 2,885 cases, 73%, had a positive cannabinoid screen and a follow-up confirmation for other cannabis metabolites, and 47.5% detected delta-9 THC at 5 nanograms per milliliter or above. What does all that mean? Bunch of mumbo-jumbo, right? According to CDOT, this is in the Department of Public Safety study, the number of fatalities in which a driver tested positive for delta-9 THC at or above the 5.0 level declined. It declined. The number of fatalities in which THC at that level was detected declined from 52, which was 13% of all fatalities in 2016, To 35 in 2017, it declined from 13% of all fatalities down to 8% of all fatalities. So if Mr. Berenson is trying to claim that the use of marijuana is leading to all of these psychoses and all of this danger and all of this death and destruction and all of this violence, the data in Colorado shows exactly the opposite, at least when it comes to traffic deaths. The lesson to be learned from this is quite simple. I know people are all emotional about marijuana. Again, I point out that I don't use it. But rather than just have this knee-jerk reaction that says, oh my gosh, marijuana is bad, I've got a knee-jerk reaction. So are opioids. So is alcohol. So are all of these other things that people are using all the time that lead to psychosis and other problems. But should we outlaw everything? Because even though we have laws against drunk driving, we still have drunk drivers. We have laws against murder. We still have murders. We could have laws against marijuana, and guess what? People still used marijuana. So when you read the story, or any other story like this one in the Wall Street Journal, I'd suggest a couple of things. One, read it closely, find out who the author is, find out what the credentials of the author are, and then do a little study of your own. Because when this author says that these two studies in Finland don't show any correlation or causation, they just show a suggestive link, then you might want to ask yourself, what the hell is a suggestive link? So, the story. Marijuana is more dangerous than you think. I don't think the story proves a thing. You know what I think this story is? I think this story is an article in the Wall Street Journal promoting his new book. Be careful what you read. I'll see you tonight at 9:30 on the radio.